What's up, guys? I just want y'all to check this video out real quick. And it's going to be a light commentary during it.
All right. As promised, the material for this week's episode of Live Free FM. The questions that I will be going over in this segment came directly from Mark Stevens at markstevens.net. The most effective out there, and one of the most simple to understand. And I wanted to share this with you guys. Although I did end up losing this case, the audio from it is probably some of the best audio that I've gotten so far that explains and exemplifies how crooked some of these judges can be when it comes to taking money for a victimless crime.
For the city of Fort Collins, caller, please stand.
She has to pause and start over because I never stand when the judge enters the courtroom. Just my personal preference, but I don't respect these people. I don't respect their authority. I don't respect what they're doing, so I do not stand for them.
Municipal Court for the city of Fort Collins, Colorado is now in session. Judge Kathleen M. Lane presiding. So respect for the system issue.
Again, referring to the fact that I did not stand, but of course I do not have respect for their system.
All right, do you want to go ahead and step up to the podium there? For the record, it is November 8th of 2010. Are you Nathaniel Frazier?
I'm called that, yes.
All right. So you are here for arraignment on case number or summons number P0006126. This is a camera radar red light summons and complaint. And the clerk had you review the written advisement form on this charge. This is from July 14th of 2010 as the date of violation listed on the summons. A charge of section 1101 subsection 1 of the city traffic code and speeding 40 miles an hour to 30 mile an hour zone, 10 miles over the posted limit is the specific charge. 0-point defense because of the state law that relates to the camera radar red light type enforcement. So the the clerk had to review the advisement form with that 0-point speeding charge checked, and it looks like you reviewed that, indicated that you had questions that you wanted to ask with regard to your rights and options. So go ahead with your question.
So what she's speaking of is the consent form, or the form that they make you fill out saying that you understand your rights and you understand the proceedings. And of course I don't, because all of it seems like a bunch of hogwash to me. So in order to get to the point where I can ask the judge the questions I want to ask, I usually take the approach of, I don't really understand this, and would I be able to speak with the judge in order to have full understanding so that I may enter a knowing and voluntary plea. This is usually fine with the clerk and usually fine with the judge because they have no idea what kind of questions I'm about to start asking.
Actually, I have questions pertaining to the nature and cause of these proceedings.
Okay, go ahead.
I would prefer to speak with the district attorney, but if I could just ask him my questions, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. First of all, am I entitled to a fair and meaningful hearing?
Yes.
Am I entitled to be informed of the nature and cause of the charges against me?
You are, and you have been in this written advisement form here.
Okay. Am I entitled to responsive answers to any questions I might have about the charges?
Certainly. And let me back up a moment and say that the district attorney who you referenced does not handle municipal court cases.
Okay.
In municipal court, the prosecutor is from the city attorney's office and referred to as a municipal court prosecutor or assistant city attorney.
So it's a city attorney then?
City attorney's office provides prosecution, yes.
Okay. And is the burden of proof on the city attorney during these proceedings?
On the city, yes.
Okay. Is this court...
That's the most important part, people. The burden is on the prosecutor, not the judge. The prosecutor. Not going in there claiming to be something and have documents for this, that, and the third, taking the burden of proof on yourself leaving it on them.
Bound by Supreme Court rulings?
Certainly,
Okay, and is it bound by the constitutions of Colorado and the United States?
certainly.
Okay. What rules, if any, govern these proceedings?
There are the Colorado Municipal Court Rules of Procedure that are adopted by the Colorado Supreme Court. There are also some procedural issues addressed in the state statutes.
Okay, and you have to comply with all of these rules?
Certainly.
Okay.
There are also some provisions within the city code itself with regard to that apply to traffic infractions specifically, as well as camera radar cases.
So all of those questions were basically just to set her into a box that she wouldn't be able to work her way out of. I asked about the Constitution and the Supreme Court rulings to basically set it up to where she had to follow or be bound by the Constitution and the Supreme Court rulings, which of course she didn't, but she gave me lip service and said she would. I also asked her about whether I was entitled to be fully informed of the nature and cause of the charges and proceedings against me. And the reason that I asked her that is because once I start asking more questions that she doesn't want to answer, she's already put herself in a double bind where she said she couldn't get a plea from me unless I knew or I was fully informed. And if she refuses to answer my questions, she's refusing to make me fully informed or allow me to be fully informed. And thus she's putting herself in the position where she can't even accept a plea from me, which
They are not allowed to have clandestine rules in the court. You are supposed to know exactly what is going on. That's why you ask for clarification for things like, for whatever they say. For example, things like municipal office. What exactly is that? And who exactly are they? I'm here on behalf of the state. What exactly does that mean? The people in the state? You're here for everyone? Because I'm one of the people, supposedly, air quotes, in the state, and you're not here for me. It's using common sense and logic and just taking what they give you and handing it right back to them. But notice, again, how you don't hear the prosecutor, who is the one who brought us here, claiming some sort of injury. Never say a word.
which is eventually what happens.
And you said that this court is consistent with the constitutions and Supreme Court rulings. Is the ticket that I was issued consistent with constitutions and Supreme Court rulings?
Well, you could certainly make an argument that it's not.
I'm not making an argument. I'm just asking a question.
This is something that
Notice, and I think he's going to speak on it as well. They love conflating. They love taking you asking a simple question into you making an argument, which anyone who's not in kindergarten knows there's a difference between asking someone a question and having an argument.
they do to me all the time. They accuse me of arguing when all I'm doing is asking questions.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
As if these people are not literate and do not understand the difference between a question and an argument. And
Shame. Shame. Shame.
That makes it a deliberate attempt to feign ignorance.
she does this multiple times to me.
Well, that would be an argument that the city would need to respond to, the prosecution.
That's
Shame.
kind of why I wanted
Whether it's a
Shame.
valid.
computer actually.
Shame.
So if there's some kind of motion you want to file, then the prosecution would need to be here to argue.
Well, I might move to dismiss, but I have a couple more questions I'd like to get answered if that's okay.
And there she does a very classic diversionary tactic that they like to take. She knows damn well that the ticket is not consistent with the Constitution. It does not allege a violation of a known legal right. It does not allege any sort of injury. She knows that it's not consistent with Supreme Court rulings, which declare that a crime must have corpus delicti. And she knows that the ticket does not allege corpus delicti. But rather than answering the question honestly, she diverts me to the prosecutor, which is something that they like to do a lot. The judge will divert me to the prosecutor will divert me to the police officer. It's always a game of handing you off to the next lowest man on the totem pole, so if you do get your case dismissed, they can blame it on the guy underneath them and avoid making themselves look bad.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Just as a note, I don't think the prosecutor is actually here in this particular hearing, but you will note in further cases that I show that the prosecutors will remain silent throughout this whole ordeal, allowing the judge to be prosecutor, which is what she's doing right now, which is illegal because you should not be prosecuting or practicing law from the bench. But of course she can't help it because she's of course a lawyer like the rest of them. Nothing bad particularly until you make it bad. Guns aren't bad until people do bad things with them. Can't blame it on that. But if you operate in a profession where you give lip service to make people come in and feel like they're having a trial, when all the while
Shame. Shame.
Is there an allegation of injury with this
Shame.
particular citation?
Injury to an individual?
An allegation of injury at all?
I would have to have the prosecution respond to that question.
Okay.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
she knows full well that she should simply say no because there is no allegations of any injury.
All I have is the face of the ticket itself, charging a speeding violation, no indication that there's any kind of accident.
And how does a plaintiff acquire standing in this court?
And I asked that question because it's been ruled multiple times by higher courts that in order to acquire standing, a plaintiff needs to allege a violation of one of their rights. And they need to allege that because of that violation, they suffered some sort of injury, and thus they are entitled to some sort of damages or monetary compensation. And none of that is alleged on this ticket.
And that is the whole point of the court, to settle real and or actual grievances of injury, loss, or harm, damage, fraud.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
She is, of course, aware that according to case law, the requirements for standing have not been met, so she defers me to statutory law in a way to get around that.
The city files a summons and complaint. One of the officers, in this case, the ticket indicates it's Officer Dennis Hallberg.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what is called Circle Talk, live and in action.
Will I be allowed to cross-examine that officer if it does come to a proceeding?
If you plead not guilty and the case is set for trial, the city would certainly have the officer here to testify, yes, and you would have the opportunity to cross-examine. It does indicate that on the rights on that written advisement form that you reviewed. Number 5 says at trial to testify or not, to present evidence and cross-examine witnesses of the city.
Okay. most of these questions that I came up with were actually geared towards the district attorney or the prosecuting attorney.
Again, this is my first time trying this approach that I learned from Mark, and I was not completely prepared as I did not exactly know what to expect, so I did make a few mistakes, and I went in there with the wrong armament for the wrong situation, but I made the best out of the situation that I could.
And you said he has the burden of proof in this. Does he have the burden of proof on every element of this crime?
The city has the burden of proof, yes, with regard to the charge.
Please listen to everything that is said. Please.
And all the elements.
And going into this, am I presumed innocent of the crime?
Certainly.
And am I presumed innocent of every element of the crime?
Certainly.
And is not jurisdiction an element of the crime?
Certainly.
So am I presumed innocent of jurisdiction then?
The city would have to allege, as they have in the summons and
Circle
complaint, and have to prove that the incident happened within the city of Port Collins.
I'm not really a lawyer. I don't really understand most of this. I just need a yes or no. Am I presumed innocent of jurisdiction of this crime?
This is a question that she does not want to answer. The reason being is that if she admits that she presumes to not have jurisdiction, if she admits that she presumes me innocent of every element, including jurisdiction, that is basically her saying that she presumes not to be able to even hear the case. It's a fatal flaw in their system. It's necessary to uphold the veil of legitimacy that they have this propaganda, that they tell you that you're presumed innocent. They do not presume you innocent, but they tell you that they do. And when you look at just the jurisdiction element of the crime, it is obvious that they do not presume you innocent. But they will say so, and when you hold their feet to their fire, they get very uncomfortable.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Well, that's an unusual way to form the question. That's why I'm struggling.
Circle talk.
But that is an element of the offense that the city has to prove.
And so I am presumed innocent of jurisdiction.
You are presumed innocent of the charge itself.
So I'm not presumed innocent of all the elements of the crime. I just need to understand this before I go forward.
Shame.
Yeah, and
Shame.
it's such an unusual question. I'm not sure how to
Shame.
answer it any differently than I already have.
Just with the yes or no.
I have to laugh at this point because most people, when they go into court with me and they see the way that I talk to judges and the way that I put them in their place, they're completely astonished and amazed. But just remember, these are people, and they're the lowest form of people. They're crooks. They're people that like to make their living off of stealing and bullying. And it's hard to talk to somebody who makes their living that way with any amount of respect. Most people do it out of fear. I don't really fear these people. We'll continue.
Well, I've already said you are presumed innocent of the charge. One of the elements of the charge is that it happened within the city of Fort Collins. So you're presumed innocent of the charge and all the elements thereof.
Okay, so if I'm presumed innocent of jurisdiction, does this court have the ability to proceed against me?
Yes, because the allegation is that it happened within the city of Fort Collins, and so it's appropriate to go ahead and proceed with the summons and complaint presented as it has been.
And if you listen to that last clip, you can tell that she's been caught on her lie. And she knows she's been caught. And you can hear the fear and the trembling in her voice, the choppiness in her voice. This is what happens when you stand up to a bully.
And who has to prove that I'm within the city of Fort Collins?
The city is the prosecution would need to provide that evidence.
And do they have any facts on record to prove that I'm, even right now, within the city limits of Fort Collins?
Do they have any facts on record to prove that?
Why is this important? Prosecutors know that it is misconduct for them to argue, mention anything, any supposed fact that is not in evidence. They cannot argue facts not in evidence. So while most people who want to use status correction, which I agree with, just good luck. I'm just saying. You're not taking a burden on yourself. These people, when you walk in the courtroom, while you're arguing about C383s and all this stuff, and who's the register of the registry and all of, listen, man, you have the prosecutor right there committing prosecutorial misconduct right in front of you. Right in front of you. They said you committed a crime within the state of New Jersey. There's no facts whatsoever in evidence that you were actually in fact and indeed in the state of New Jersey. I mean, it's so many different ways. Why would you take a burden of proof on yourself? But that's why the question he asked is so important. They cannot argue facts not in evidence. That's misconduct.
The prosecution would have to respond to that type of question.
Exactly. Yeah, she's going to dodge
Actually,
that.
getting into the charge itself. If you want to ask that the arraignment date be postponed for 2 weeks, so you have time to file a written motion and the city can respond.
You get a shame.
And then we determine whether that motion is granted or not. And if not, if the motion to dismiss is denied, then it would be set for trial. And then you can have a trial on the charge itself.
Which they're going to push through.
Again, the question is too difficult for her to answer. So, once again, I am deferred to the prosecutor. And that's her way of keeping herself out of the spotlight.
Note, if the prosecutor was there for this hearing, the prosecutor would just mumble some jumbo, no disrespect to Mama Diombo, but they would mumble some jumbo, and she would just agree with it. That's all she'd do, is agree with it. Because they're colluding.
Continue.
Okay. You already said that I am entitled to a fair and meaningful hearing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Could I get a fair and meaningful hearing if there was a conflict of interest?
I would assume you would argue no.
Again,
Why would someone assume anyone would argue,
Shame. Shame. Shame.
Why would one need to assume to argue anything? If there's a conflict of interest, I cannot get a fair hearing.
She accuses me of arguing when I'm asking a question, and she says she assumes I would argue no, as if anybody would argue that, yes, a judge with a conflict of interest could offer a fair trial.
No, I'm asking you what the answer is. I'm not going to argue about it.
Well, what kind of conflict of interest are you talking about?
Well, if you represented a party to the proceedings, would that be a conflict of interest?
Certainly, and I would not do that. And if there were any conflict that I had,
She said certainly she would not do that, while she is actively doing that.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
I would recuse myself.
So you heard her say it, folks. She said that if she represented a party to the proceeding, it would be a conflict, and if that conflict existed, she would recuse herself.
Okay, you would recuse yourself. So you wouldn't seek to enforce any judgment against me if there was found to be a conflict of interest?
If there was I'm not sure what you mean. If
there was a
there's
conflict
a
of
conflict,
interest.
we would deal with the conflict, remove the conflict before the case ever went to trial.
Okay.
If you go to trial, you're found guilty, then the court would enforce the judgment, but
All right.
collect the judgment.
And who do you represent in these proceedings?
I am hired by the city of Fort Collins as the municipal judge.
Okay, and who's the plaintiff in these proceedings?
It is the city of Fort Collins. It's stated as
Oh, snap. She just said she represents the city of Fort Collins and is paid for by the city of Fort Collins.
Shame.
And when I asked her who the plaintiff to the proceedings was, she said that the plaintiff is also the city of Fort Collins. She realizes that she just admitted that she represents and is paid for by a party to the proceedings. And let's see how she tries to get out of this. A
Shame.
lot of backpedaling.
Shame. Shame.
Of stuttering, maybe? Let's find out.
Shame.
Let me see how
Shame.
it specifically has it worded.
Shame.
It's a charge, again, they allege it's a charge committed against the people of the city of Fort Collins. At the top, it's in Fort Collins Municipal Court and for the city of
What
Fort
people?
Collins. So it's city attorney's office representing the city of Fort Collins in general.
So you're being paid by the city, and the plaintiff is the city. And is that not a conflict of interest?
It's not a conflict of interest.
It's not a
Shame.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Shame.
we're going to stop right there. You heard it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. That's collusion to anyone who has a brain. And to anyone who wouldn't willfully ignore evidence right in your face. So, like, comment, share, subscribe. I have a link in the homepage for my Twitter for you guys to join up. I'm going to start posting the videos that I do there as well. There's a link as well to Shame TV, East Watch. I'm going to start, I promise you guys, I'm going to start filling that up in the coming days and then starting this evening more than likely. And one more, Derek Jones Talks. We're going live tonight. It's going to be a follow-up of the video that I dropped earlier. Survival mode. Are Black people prepared, and are Black people ignoring a possible future that may be awaiting us? We're going to talk about that live tonight in the form of Flint, Michigan. Are we missing out? And Black Wall Street, a combined conversation. And all of this is ultimately a triple combined conversation that we're going to have tonight regarding, are we missing out on Flint, Michigan, recreating our own little community, which will ensure our survival, hopefully. So that's where I'm pushing it. Shame TV, the link is in the homepage beside the Patreon. My Twitter is in the homepage beside Shame TV link. And my Patreon is there waiting for someone to be the very first person to donate to Derek Jones Talks and all that we're trying to do. So thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this stuff. And da-da-da-da-da. And that's that, guys. I'm going to holler at you. Let me stop this. I'm done. Peace. See you this evening. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Donate, please. Be the first one so you can say you were the first one. Links to Shame TV. Link to my Twitter. Hit me up.